ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Think Different podcast. I am Will, a former Apple creative and genius who worked at the Apple Store for over 11 years, and today starts a brand new series called Final Cut Fridays. This was a feature I did inside of an Apple Store where every Friday I released a new segment of Final Cut so that people can learn how to use Final Cut Pro. And there's definitely a lot of free tutorials out there, but this is coming from someone who has used Final Cut 3, so I've been a user since 2003. That's how long I've been a user. And I wanted to teach people how to use Final Cut, and we're going to really make things very detailed here so that a basic user can use this. If you're using iMovie is great. It's a great free option, but I think it's actually taken a backseat over the last couple of years where it's not as easy. In fact, I think iMovie on the phone is easier than using the iMovie in the Mac OS. And what my goal here is to show people how to do simple things to make a simple edit and to use fun little keyboard shortcuts and things like that make it very easy. Now, if you're not a Final Cut user, you have to pay $300 to get it. However, there is something called Final Cut Pro for free for 90 days. You can actually download and get a full version. This is not a tempered version. This is completely free. And of course, this is a lot longer than what Adobe would give you. So you can get a free version for Final Cut to try for your Mac. And I would strongly recommend that. All right, so this episode is just breaking down the simple things of how it works. So we're going to start right here on the top left corner because this is going to be the most important thing. And as you can see, as I'm clicking, what they call the inspector over here, or the properties, whatever you want to call it. But if you click on this icon up here, this icon actually is the inspector. So it's important to know this area will reflect whatever you're doing on the screen. Final Cut Friday is the name of the library file. The library file is basically where you're storing all of the assets inside of this one library. To show you what that looks like, I am actually going to go to where this is actually located. So here's Final Cut Friday, and if I open this up with something called Show Package Contents, it'll break down some things that you see here, including the event. Now the event is this can be done differently for everybody. For events, you could have one library with multiple events in it. The best case example I would say for that would be if you have everything from 1 year. So if instead of it, everything from 2022, and you could put events like Christmas, Easter, that way you can organize everything in 1 year, and you can have Easter in here, you could have Christmas in here. That would be a good way to use the library. What I use for my own method, because I am a wedding videographer, is I put each single event that I record into one library. I find that to be the easiest way because eventually we'll talk about how we move content from one to another, and I found that over the years it's much easier to organize everything into a library for one item I'm working with because there's no connection between one wedding over another. They're two different things, and I could put every wedding under 2022, but then the amount of items I would have to load at the same time is just a little too high, so I'd rather not do that. So the important thing to know that in this area is where you're going to see your events, where you're going to see your keywords, smart collections. There's going to be a whole bunch of different things. Apple does this by default. It gives you a smart collection, so that way you can already find things quicker. Audio only, favorites, projects, stills. So they're already kind of organized. It makes things a lot easier than trying to just set this up yourself. And that's what this area is for. The next button is taking you to everything in your media library, and that connects your Apple Music, GarageBand, Photos, Logic Pro, and the sound effects that you can download into the system. Right now, I don't have anything here on purpose, but you have all these different sound effects that are given to you for free that you can add. So like mining, they have a microwave. So if you have to add little sound effects in, you can. And I've used these from time to time. As you can see, it took a while, and I have a whole bunch of them here. They have iLife, which is old school. If you were an iMovie, iPhoto user, they had a whole bunch of these. Theme music, they have like little theme songs. These are royalty free, by the way, you can use. And then you have a whole bunch of other miscellaneous effects that you can add in there. So that's what this area is for. And I'll be honest, I don't use this as often as I would, only because I think that Apple needs to improve this. Finally, it is titles and generators. So titles are pre-made titles that they give you for free. As you skim across this, what they'll do is they'll actually show you a preview of what it would be. So some things will work, some things will not work. So that way you can see what is happening before you use it. And we'll dive deeper into titles later on, but this is just a simple setup of that Apple provides to you. And then you have generator. Be like I use this for like backgrounds. Like you can do. I have a bunch of other ones I bought and I stored in here. So there's a whole bunch of different things. These are just basic backgrounds that do certain things that you can add to your videos as well. Clouds, yeah, a whole bunch of stuff like that. So use them if you think they're necessary, and that would be this area right here. So that is the completely that is everything here. There are a couple of little small things, but we'll use them as we go along. Next up is your viewer. This will be where your video content will be played. Anywhere your arrow moves when you're playing content would be in this area. You could choose on how big it is. So if you want it to be smaller for some reason, you want it to be bigger for some reason, it would actually shorten what's on the screen, because maybe there's stuff outside the screen you might need. Also, you can see view here, a whole bunch of things in here. The main things I use are video scopes. So if you actually want to see the scope of video, which we'll talk about color correction, angles, if you have a 360 camera, quality, like playback, because sometimes the quality you have might be a little overpowering for the machine, and we'll talk about proxies later on. But just a whole bunch of different things. Action and title save. This was important for DVDs back in the day. You have custom overlays you can set up, showing HDR, because everything records HDR now. So a bunch of different things in here that we'll dive into that are important. I'll be honest, I do not use everything in here. So that's important to know. I don't use every single feature and every single thing. And on the bottom of the viewer, you'll have different tools. Transform is in here, crop is in here. I won't go into these too much because right now we have no content to play. There's not really much to go into, but basically this is a way to transform your footage. This is a way to do auto color correction or auto fixing features. And then you have speed controls here. You can actually make this wider over here. And then we already talked about the inspector, but the inspector is this icon right here, which will show you whatever you're clicking on will have. If I was to open up something I clicked on here, it shows me I can modify this library, I can modify the content that's in it, and it just gives you, like this for example, gives a lot of detail. So just remember that. And the last thing over here we're going to talk about on the bottom is called the timeline. So that's opening up this right here. And then the timeline is where your editing is going to take place in this big long line right down here. On the left, you're going to have something called indexing, which will be a way to kind of search within your timeline of things that you're looking for. I'll show you great ways how to use this feature later on. And then to the right is your audio waves. So this is the basic setup of Final Cut Pro. It's a very short way to get started looking in here. The most important thing we're going to probably talk about first is over here, because this is organizing. And just if I go up here, this is going to tell us the name, which is called the browser. So if I click on it, it goes away and it comes back. So there are going to be times where you don't need to look at the browser and you can have more room to look at things. Same thing with the timeline. Like right now, why do we need a timeline? We really don't need one because there's nothing there. So this would be a great starting point. In fact, I don't need the inspector either. Really, this is a good starting point, just having these two things off. And you could save these layouts too. So if there's a layout that you really like and you don't want to have to look at anything else, you can go up to Window and you can actually save this workspace, and that's where this is. So you have different ones to choose by default. So if I go to organize, this is just organized. So now it's actually kind of what the layout is here, where you can go through your footage and organize it first. And then if I go back to Window, I can go to workspaces and I can choose default. It brings me back to where we just were. This is the main layout. I have my own, which is a little different, but it just changes the sizing around. And so you can create your own workspaces and you can save them that way. So if you want a certain way for things to look, let's say you don't want the audio waves. Like, so I'm going to take away the audio waves by clicking this button right here, and I want to save this. I will save it as a workspace, and I'll call it no audio. And now that's saved. So to see the example, I will go back to my default, and then go back to workspaces, no audio. And there you go. And that's how you save a layout. And you could be switching between these depending on what you're doing. And the cool thing is you actually have these shortcuts, which, my God, you need to know shortcuts inside of Final Cut. It will make your job much easier. So the default layout is actually Command 0. So on my keyboard, Command 0 brings back the default layout. And here's a whole timeline of items here, of footage. And then if I break it down, here's all the different keywords I created already. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to organize. So that's a starting point of Final Cut Pro, learning the layout, because if you don't know where you're going in Final Cut, you definitely need to do this. Stay tuned. We will have episodes every single Friday. And hope you guys enjoy this real basic start of Final Cut Pro.